Why, when we're in the middle of wrestling with our flesh, why is it that sometimes we don't reach out? Like, we reach out after the fact and say, I lived through it, but in the moment of the wrestle, we don't reach out to each other. And it's like, maybe we were just sort of defiant children somewhere on the inside where we're like, no, I'm going to go to that bar, or I'm going to go have that one night stand, or I'm going to go smoke that crack, or whatever our demon is that we wrestle with, that when we're in the middle of wrestling with it, we don't just grab a brother or a sister and say, help me make it through today, because it's a tough one today. That we just, I don't know. But maybe by saying it out loud, it will open the invitation and heal the spirit of secrecy that sometimes we live in. I've been a part of Real Life Church for, I don't know, I think about 4 years. But it could be 5 or it could be 3.
I'm a day oneer of Real Life. And it all started when we came to visit my wife's cousin in 2009. We visited my cousin.
I've been coming to Real Life since February 2018.
We started Real Life February last year, and my life leading up to coming to Real Life was a pretty rocky road.
I started coming to Real Life in February. I met Felice at our job. Actually didn't even like each other when we met. It wasn't until we had a conversation about God and she gently started working on me and asking me to come to Real Life.
I've been a part of Real Life Church for about the past year, but before that, I was a part of the same body of people, but I took a way different path than the rest of them.
I was extremely broken. I was an alcoholic for about 5 years. And I remember wanting to change, needing to change, but not knowing how to change. And she started sending me devotionals. And I started reading the devotionals and spending time with God, but everything that I needed to happen wasn't happening. I think at that point I really wasn't ready to surrender. And it wasn't until I was in a really bad drunken state, sitting at my kitchen table, literally contemplating suicide, and I heard God's voice, and he said, "You're gonna die." And I knew he didn't mean physically, but he meant I was killing my soul. And so I started asking her questions. I started seeking more time with him. I started praying. She introduced me to the podcasts, started listening to the podcasts. I came to Real Life and heard Grace Undeserved. And it wasn't in that moment until I realized how much I meant to God, and that everything I had been trying to change was pointless. I just needed to grow closer to him so he could change me.
When I came here, I came very depressed and broken. I was in a place of fear. I have one son. He was the only son that I was ever able to have. A lot of you have heard stories about him and things that he's been through, that God's got him through. But I didn't realize the panicked, fearful place that I was in from things that were going on in his life.
My path has been quite zigzag back and forth. I met my wife, and she saved my life, and I have God to thank for that. I got led to this wonderful church that turned my whole vision around on how I even look at God and think about religion and spirituality. I figured out how to be a good steward. I figured out how to be, that I was actually supposed to, spread God's word. I always thought that I was a receiver, that I was supposed to was supposed to teach me things. But the more I talked about God and the more I told other people about God, the more I learned.
I touched down in Claremore, Oklahoma. You like that, don't you? Hey, I got to Claremore, man. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was a different atmosphere for me, man, because I'm used to being in the streets. I'm used to being around things I don't need to be around, man. I was around a lot of drugs and gangs and all that type of stuff back in the Lou. So I ended up in Oklahoma. When I got here, I was antisocial. I used to go to church, then I wouldn't show up for like a couple months. And then every time something bad happened to me, I started praying and I'd go back to church. So the situation happened when our pastor left us. And that's when the real one took over. But in between this transition of the old pastor leaving, I kind of strayed away too because I was hurt. And I was one of the people that was like, man, every time I go to church, I get hurt. So I ended up leaving. So within that time, I was going through a lot. And that's when real life was really becoming real life. And before you know it, it was real life. So 2013 is when we made our transition into our new facility back then. And I was still out here being Kirk. I was just doing what I want to do, not caring about nobody. I was always about me. I used to always say it's all about me and my kids, and I didn't care about nobody else, blah, blah, blah. But October the 24th, 2013 is when God really handed it to me. I ran back into church. I was crying like a little baby. I was really hurt. But you get in those modes when you feel like something getting taken away from you, or you feel like you're finna lose something. And that's how I was feeling, so I went back to church. And I started being around everybody. I started going to all the functions. I started just doing church stuff with everybody, which I didn't do because I just felt I needed to be by myself.
I had been looking for a church. I had not lived in my house where I lived very long. I was a single mom. I've been trying to date, and I was lost and confused in that world, and really knew that I felt it was pain. It just, everything I kept bumping into out there felt like pain. But God has this funny way of using even your flesh to get you where he wants you to be. And so Kendrick and Elizabeth moved in across the street from me. And I remember the day they moved in. And, it's no lie. We all can recognize that our pastor is a handsome man. So I went bebopping over to say, hi, welcome to the neighborhood, which I would have done anyway. But I did go over because, he caught my eye, and he immediately said, I can't wait for you to meet my wife, Elizabeth. And I immediately had respect for him. Amongst the men of trying to date in the world, I had an encounter with a person who immediately stood up for what was important to them. And so my respect was immediately there. And then he told me later, not even the first time we met, but later, you know, in conversation across the street, I learned that he was a pastor of a church, and I was looking for a church. And so, you know, God will use even our fleshly nature to bring us where we need to be. So the first time I tried to come to church, I couldn't find it. I found Destiny Life though, and that was good. But I knew I wanted someplace that had more diversity, and I needed someplace where I felt safe to just express and sort of purge all this pain that I was carrying, and to just get relief. And so it became my oasis.
Everybody just started sharing and talking, and you know, I used to think that being a Christian and walking with God meant having no struggles, and it just made me realize that I couldn't have been more wrong. Everybody struggles, and it just made it to where I had a support group. I had these women that I had never met that loved me just the way I was and exactly how broken I was. And the overflow that has come out of that has been amazing. We lived in a house that was poisoning me. I lost all my hair because of it. And I prayed and I prayed and I prayed for God to bless us with a new home, and He did. And slowly, the grip of alcohol faded. I didn't have the urges that I had anymore. I didn't want to be that person that I was anymore, because I had the grace of God, and that was something I thought I had to be perfect to receive. I got a support group and truth and understanding of how much God really loved me. And it's changed everything.
Being at Real Life and the ideologies and the love that you feel here in this family will truly show you what God has intended here on the earth. There is nothing like the feeling of walking into a place and feeling like you've known the people your whole life, and that you're all family, and everybody understands your problems, and everybody has been there. Not necessarily like on your path. A lot of people have, you know, walked similar paths, but the great thing is they all have something to contribute, and it's all good because it all comes from a God mind and a God heart. And Real Life has completely changed my view on organized religion. I used to be against it, and now I find myself in the middle of church, completely just enthralled with everything that I learn every time I read a new scripture I haven't read before, or every time I hear something from Pastor Kendrick or another one of the members that just completely opens my mind.
I hit this point though of being so depressed and suicidal that I remember one day I was driving right down Blue Star, as a matter of fact, in front of the park, and it just hit me. Like, I've been trying so hard to do it by myself. I've been trying so hard just to somehow overcome it through all this stuff that I know about science and self-help and understanding. And if I could just understand my depression enough, then I can just climb over it. And I was driving for the park, and Marley was in the car with me, and it just hit like a ton of bricks. I'm sure being menopausal added to it, but so I called her dad and had him come and get Marley. And I kind of took myself through this process of killing myself, imagining my brain splattered on the wall, because I felt like I needed to kill that part of me that was so desperate. Like, I just needed to somehow kill that. so I could just remove it. But then it kept coming back, you know. It felt like I could just dig in this green goop. Like I could just reach down in that green goop. I could put my finger in it, it just come right up. And I can remember sometimes laying on the couch and I would fantasize about the worst things. You know, sometimes I would think about, well, what would happen to my daughter, you know, if I'm gone. And then I would fantasize about, well, you know, maybe I should kill her and then kill myself. And I was telling April this. When I said it to her, I looked up and I'm like, that sounds so crazy now to say it. But in the moment, it felt so real, like that was an actual avenue of relief. A couple of months went by, and we had there was a training, like a prayer training. Robert Rush came. There was this prayer training, and I wasn't going to be able to be there the whole day. It was a 2-day thing because I knew I needed to take care of Marley. So I went for as much as I could, and it only happened to be the first morning. So from like 9 to 12, I was there. And he took us through this process of digging into, he said, do it like you're going to give birth. So I'm bent over, and I'm just, all that depression and all that orphan feeling and the loneliness and the rejection and the hurtful things that people had said out there in the world of trying to date, and the absolute mess I drug my soul through in that time. And I just felt it, you know, and I'm just, I'm in it, in the middle of my feelings. And then it just happened, you know, and it was gone. Like I felt like this instant relief. And from that moment on, I felt sad and I felt a little depressed, but that green gunk, that's the only way I know how to describe it. Like I can reach down and even try to feel around for it, and it's not there. It's gone. And it's spiritual healing, and I claim it as that. I claim that as being healed from those deep caverns of pain.
I struggled with isolation, which really tore me apart in ways that I didn't think was possible. I got extremely addicted to Xanax, and that sent me down the worst path possible. When I lost my aunt about 2 years ago, and she raised me from the ground up. I was born into a family with like nothing but drug abuse. I used to go to my grandma's house or my mom's house, and they would be making the drugs there in the house. So my aunt and uncle pulled me from that environment and took me in whenever I was about 7 or 8. So she wasn't an aunt to me, she was my mom. And so to lose her, it was the hardest thing that I have ever experienced. When she did pass, I dove into isolation even worse. I tried to take my own life. I didn't want to be here because she was the only person that I felt listened to me, and the only person that I felt was around. And when I lost her, I didn't know if I'd have that again. And then I ended up going to jail, and I did get released like 2 weeks later into a program that they have, and it's called Drug Court. And while I was there, I knew that it would be taken care of through Father. I found my faith again in there. I read the Bible in there. Honestly, it was the first time I ever did read the Bible. It was the first time I ever opened it. And I knew of a church that was in Claremore because that's where I started my walk with faith. And so I talked to a friend and asked where it was, and I came back, and it's now real life. So whenever I got here, what I had missing whenever I lost my aunt was immediately restored. And I need my next question before I start bawling. Yeah.
All my life I've been going to church, from a kid up to now. And I haven't seen the love that I see in real life church anywhere else. Like, I can honestly say that, like, it don't matter what you do, don't nobody worry about, well, that person did that, or he did that last week. Don't nobody care about that, man, you know? Community is community. It don't matter, we all brothers and sisters, man. And I really wouldn't know that unless, if I didn't go through that situation I went through with my baby, I'll probably be thinking in my head that don't nobody care, or don't nobody love me, or don't nobody at the church care. But I can't say that, because it's real.
As soon as I got back to real life, I immediately hopped back into community. It makes an impact on my life, just due to the fact that isolation was my biggest problem. And my accountability partners, my brothers, which a lot of my music interprets my brothers and what they do for me and what they stand for in my life. They hold me accountable more than anybody has ever in my life. And the fact that I never had that was hard, and I felt like I was able to do whatever I wanted without consequences, not understanding what happens whenever you make bad decisions or you just community is important. Doing it for Father, you can mark that off my checklist. All about my brothers, you can see that in my necklace. Accept it, hit it, deliver the Lord's message. Blessed with everything I need if the devil tries testing. We strive off excellence. It's all for the kingdom. What a wonderful selection. I stand by my brothers. Like I was the best man. Used to fear rejection, now for nothing but acceptance. Word up. Used to sip syrup, but now I got brothers to lean on. My team strong, feeling like King Kong. Squad full of stars, got us feeling like Team Braun. Serving for the Father, but we ain't playing ping pong. Yeah, I love my brothers. This is their theme song. I ride for them guys. It's a by any means song. I pride to our side, go chasing our dream song. I fly to the sky, go chasing our king song. Yeah, we on.
But coming to real life, a lot of things have shifted now. I didn't expect to be talking to anyone about this stuff. There's been a lot of times that I've felt like I'm just not nice. I mean, just give me your heart, God, because all of the things and pain that I have been through, not knowing if your son's going to make it. It took me away from my husband, being able to talk to people around me. All I did was cry and pray. But when I was going through things, I would be in the middle of something and I hadn't heard from my son, and I knew he was out, and I knew he was in a dangerous situation. I knew he was on an addicted to drug, and I didn't know what was going to happen. But through all of that, there's times that I would be at home and I would be crying by myself, and I would be praying, and I would get a call from somebody from real life. If it wasn't one of them, if it wasn't one of the ladies that were my mentors, it was pastor. Or it was one of the ladies that were in prayer with me, or one of my sisters. They're all my sisters, but there were times that I would be in the middle of fear and praying and crying and wondering what was going to happen to my son, and I would get a text message from someone that was in prayer that heard the Lord say, "Put on your boots." And that was a prophetic thing that was told to me when I go through anxiety and fear, to put on my boots, my combat boots. And I just looked up by myself in my home, and I'm like, I know, you're watching me. But community, real life, there's no place like our church. There's no place like us.